Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark, and today I'm joined by guest Shachar Meir. Shachar, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to see you. We're actually doing some video this time,
Thanks
but
for me.
wanted to get your handsome face on the internet. So what we're going to talk about today is Shahar's journey from, I think you said 20 years of employment into solopreneurship. And I think it's going to be really useful for folks who are maybe at that kind of a juncture. So they're at an, maybe they're in a technical position at a big company and they either are worried about layoffs or they just got laid off or they just don't even want to be in that position. They just want to try something where they have more control over their time, more sort of control, more freedom. So before we get to that, though, could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so thanks again for having me. And just also wanted to say thanks for everything you've done for me over the last 2 years. I mean, I've learned a lot from you personally, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Nice.
I've started my career about 20 years ago in data. I started as a DBA, I became a team lead, and since then I've always been in data and leadership positions in both startups and scale up companies, as well as bigger companies such as PayPal and Meta. At Meta in London, I was the London data engineering site lead. I've grown the data engineering function in London from about 4 data engineers when I started to more than 200 at the peak.
Mm.
I've managed the data for a small portfolio of products in ads with a run rate of $7 billion a year. And in my
Wow.
last job, I was the director of data engineering for all of Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger's trust and safety problems. And I left Meta 2 years ago, and we can talk about all of that in a second,
Cool.
to become an advisor because I've realized that there is an opportunity. I've realized that basically over the past 20 years, I've seen a lot of companies that had a lot of data. They had what I would consider to be good data teams. They had decent data platforms and nothing was working. It was like they were basically failing with their data.
Hmm.
So I tried to understand why does it happen? Why do good companies fail with their data? And as I did my research, I've discovered two things. One is that I have the playbook and I know how to fix it because essentially throughout the entire 20 years, that's what I've done. I've fixed data teams in different companies.
Hmm.
And the second thing is that I can have a lot more impact if instead of being chief data officer in one company at a time, I'll work as an advisor and help different companies apply my playbook. So I thought I would try that. And here we are.
Cool. And so I know you also do sort of career coaching. I don't know how you refer to it, but for folks who are,
Mentoring, yeah.
yeah, mentoring. Okay. So, but this. I mean, what you just described sounds like very high level, very specialized consulting for very big companies, probably.
Yeah, so I would say my ideal customer is probably a company with, they already have data teams, they already have data platforms. I would say they're probably about 500 people or above, so kind of medium sized and above. Even though my best clients are probably at their kind of 2,000, 3,000 people ballpark. And
Mm-hmm.
my client would be an executive level, so probably the chief data officer, VP,
Mm-hmm.
data analytics. These are the typical clients that I work with, and yeah, it's kind of
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I do want to get into the transition piece, but I think it would be helpful for people to hear a little bit more about about your that actual specific business and what kind of engagements do you do with your clients? What is the nature of the engagement? Is it like a month to month advisory thing, or is it like a one time strategy workshop with all the executives, or coaching for the staff, the teams? What sorts of ways do you monetize your expertise?
Yeah, so I'm to be completely honest, I'm still iterating on that, and I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I've
Mm-hmm.
only been doing that for 2 years, and 2 years is not a lot of time when you do a lot of experimentation. I can say that throughout these 2 years, I've done different types of projects. I started with very hands-on projects, which I liked, but I just felt that it's not giving me the leverage that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then I transitioned to projects where I'm sort of architecting, guiding, doing shoulder coding and reviewing, but still kind of technical projects. I enjoyed these projects a lot, but I still felt like it's not hitting the full potential that I can get with what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And now I sort of landed, the last few projects I've done, which I feel like is becoming more of the direction that I'm going to go going forward, is basically start with a gap analysis or an assessment. So I come into a
Yeah.
company where something is not working and they know something is not working and they ask for help. So that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I do my gap analysis. I use the understand, identify, execute framework, which is, it's basically what it sounds, right? I come in, I have a set of understand questions and a list of people that I'm going to talk to understand those things. I do the gap analysis, and using my experience, my knowledge, and everything, and my playbooks, I can sort of understand why these things happen fairly quickly and what are the root causes, and then
Mm-hmm.
put together some plan. So that's the strategy assessment. But unlike other like big consulting firms, if you think of the McKinseys and Deloittes of the world and all of that, where they do these kind of assessments and then they go, I sort of continue holding the client's hand for a period of about a year after that, and
Mm-hmm.
help them, sort of roll out the changes that we talk about.
Cool.
Uh, and these changes can be anything from technology to people to process to culture. So we look holistically at the whole picture to try and understand why things are not working.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I think that gives people a really good flavor for what it is that you do in this consulting business. All right. So then now let's zoom back and probably maybe if you have to give us some backstory to kind of set this up, that would be good. But what I'd really like to find out is what was the thing that changed that caused you to decide to go solo, and what was making that decision like? What did you think about? How nervous were you? Yada yada, all that stuff.
Okay, so I will say, first of all, it didn't happen overnight. It was a decision that I've been cooking for a while, and I would say that there were three factors that eventually made me make that decision. So the first one is pretty much since the moment I've joined Meta, and even before I was getting a lot of job offers on LinkedIn. But since I joined Meta, I just felt like none of them were kind of relevant. Like in after like 4 years of getting job offers and rejecting them, I
Mm-hmm.
started asking myself, what's next? You know what I mean? What's the next thing? And the fact that nothing seems appealing started concerning me, because I sort of asked myself, is that it? Like, is that the end of my career? And where am I going from here?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have an answer for that question for a very long time, but at the same time, I was very happy. I mean, I was growing, I was learning, I was doing really well. I was, appreciated. So I just felt like, okay, at some point I would need to answer that question. It was in the back of my mind, but it was never the right time to answer that question. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's the first thing, and then probably around, I would say, middle 2022 is when Meta started making a lot of changes, and for the first time doing layoffs and doing a lot of things um, that were making it very difficult to be a middle manager in the company, if I'm being honest, right? Because if I wasn't a decision maker in any of those things, I had to execute on that. I didn't always understand all those things, and it was a difficult time to be in big tech in general, and I think that's
Right.
especially being a middle manager. And so I needed an outlet, and I started working on my helicopter pilot license.
Oh,
And
right. Yeah, yeah.
one of
I
my
forgot about that.
yeah. So one of my instructors, Phil, he was actually super influential for me, because and inspirational, because he's a medical doctor, and he's got a clinic, and he works in his clinic 3 days a week, and 2 days a week he's flight instructing.
Mm.
And it was a revelation for me, because it was the first time that I realized that you don't just have to be one thing in your life. You can be more than one thing. And I mean, maybe it sounds obvious right now when I say that, but to me, it wasn't obvious. Throughout my whole
Mm.
life, I thought, okay, you just have to be one thing.
Right.
Right now I work at Meta. Maybe in the future I'll do something else. But I didn't realize that you can have this kind of flexibility and you can do more than one thing. So it started appealing to me, the idea that you can organize your life around the things that you like doing and around things that you want to be doing, rather than the other way around, like organizing your life around job, basically.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, and
so
just to be clear, like you wouldn't have an option to say to Meta, like, I just want to work 3 days a week. How's that sound?
no,
No.
That wasn't an option.
Yeah.
And even if you do, I mean, some companies do offer part-time jobs, but you work part-time, but the rest of your team, the rest of the company, they work 24/7, right? So
Yeah.
you sort of tap in and out, and I don't think it works particularly well, because while you're not there, you're doing your own thing. Um, Somebody else is working, they're dependent on you, they send you questions, they always get
Yeah.
disappointed. So it's just the wrong setup for these kind of things. And I thought that what Phil was doing, and he actually told me, he said, Shahar, the clinic is my job. That's how I pay the bills, and that's how I can afford the lifestyle that I have. But my real passion is flying, and I like doing. I do it twice a week, and he kind of managed to find a balance that I never had.
Mm.
I was very fortunate to be able to fly. I was very fortunate to, to be able to do these things, but I just never had the time. And he found a balance,
Mm.
and to me that was amazing. And then the last thing was that in January 23, when I got back from New Year's, I got the news that one of my team members in the US, she unfortunately was involved in a car accident, and she passed away.
Wow.
And she was very young. I mean, I think she must have been around 25. Meta was her first job. I mean, she was doing all the right things in her life, right? She got a degree from a great university. She worked in Meta. She lived in New York. Like, she did everything right, and then it stopped, right? And
Mm.
it was shocking to me in a lot of different ways, and it also made me feel about. It made me think about how I live my life, and how I was taught
Mm.
I need to live my life. And I was always taught that the way you live is you basically work, 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 you build your financial foundations, and then at some point you retire, and then you start living your life.
Yeah.
And after seeing what happened to her, I thought, okay, I don't want to wait. Like, nothing is guaranteed. I
Mm.
need to find a way to live my life now, and to do the things I want to do now. I cannot leave it to chance, right? I don't know what's going to
Right.
happen. And those three things coming together, sort of what's next, the question of what's next, plus, the fact that I've realized that you don't just have to be one thing, and trying to discover and find a new balance in my life, plus the idea that I want to do the things I want to do now, all kind of led me to the idea that as long as I work for a big company, I would never be able to do that, and I will never have the flexibility that I need to have in my life at that stage to be able to do the things I want to do. So,
Mm.
um,
And what things did you consider at that point? So you knew you had to do something. Were there a range of things, or was it pretty much definitely going to be consulting or some kind of entrepreneurship,
um,
or like being a helicopter flight instructor? Like.
I wish. I don't think I would be able to afford my lifestyle and being a flight instructor full time, unfortunately.
Mm.
I also have two little girls at home, and I want to be present. I want to be here. So I needed to be working from home. I just thought, now is the time to try, stand on my own, and see what it's like, and try being an advisor. And I thought, okay, I've been working for 20 years. I've got the experience. I've got the knowledge. I've got the playbooks.
Hmm.
Maybe I can do something a little bit different. And I just thought, I have to give it a shot, right? I have to try
Yeah.
and see what happens, because working for another big company is going to be the same.
Okay. Yeah. That, I mean, makes total sense. So what were your first like concrete steps in that direction?
Yeah, so I didn't know what does it mean to be a solopreneur, and unfortunately, nothing teaches you that. You kind of have to figure out
Yeah.
your own path. So I started with the basic things that I knew I needed to do, like registering a company, like incorporating a company, and opening a bank account, and
Yeah.
the logical things that I knew I needed to do.
Hmm.
Start my own company, I found an accountant, and I sort of tried to interrogate him to explain how do I actually bill clients, and what does it
Yeah.
mean to create an invoice, and really the basics of that. I tried to talk to a bunch of people who are already freelancers, and they work in that way, just to understand what is it that they actually do. And
Hmm.
then I realized I need to find my first client. So, even before I left Met, I just started tapping into my network and people I've worked with in the past, and just talking to all of them and saying, hey, I'm going to become an advisor. I'm going to become a freelancer. How can I help you? Basically, what's your biggest problem right now? and how can I help you with that?
Mm-hmm.
And those were the kind of conversations that I was having. Of course, very quickly after that, I realized that people are asking me, "Yeah, oh, that's great. What are you going to do?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't actually know, right?" So I sort of have had to figure out what is it that I do, and
Yeah.
I just thought, let me just find problems and solve them, and I'll take it from there because I really don't know.
Mm-hmm. When you were doing the outreach to your network, were you concerned that that was going to get back through the grapevine to whoever your manager was, or had you already given notice? I know people get nervous about this. That's why I ask.
Yeah, at that point, I'd already given the notice. It was clear that I'm leaving, and
Mm.
I was probably on the way out, and I started exploring so that I have something to do as soon as I finish.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just curious. Okay. So then, and you were going to say the first project you landed.
So my first project, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a CEO of he's a founder of a big company, and I asked him, "What's your biggest problem?" And he said the biggest problem is with customer success. We have customers. It's a B2B company, and he said the customers don't renew the license, or they don't you know they don't renew their licenses. But then when we actually look at their profile, we realize that they hadn't used the product for a few months. Maybe our champion has left the company, and we didn't realize that. We haven't contacted them for a while. They haven't actually done all the certifications and all the things that we're supposed to help them understand the product better. They're not using the features that they're supposed to use. So we're finding out those things, but it's too late. And I said, that's a data project. I mean, this is essentially like building, a signals table for every customer and all those signals that we're looking at, and then saying, okay, when's the next renewal? Let's find all the customers who are supposed to renew in the next quarter and are meeting these criteria, and let's just raise some alerts or raise some flags so that customer support can proactively contact them and
Yep.
start, or maybe even the account manager can contact them. And he was sold. He said, "Yeah, that's my biggest problem. That's what I want to do. So please help us." And I started doing that. That was my first project.
That's great. So, like, let me just for the dear listener, I just wanted to emphasize that you weren't coming. You're coming to the person with a skill set, but you weren't saying, "How can I do a data project with you?" You were legitimately asking, like, "What problems do you have?" And in this case, you were lucky that the kinds of skills that you had could solve that problem. But if that weren't the case, there's like no sale. Like, there's no, yeah, I'm going to convince this person they have a data problem. So it's like it's just synchronicity. It's like, oh, great, there's an overlap between your skill set and their problem set. So that's fantastic. Also, it's a very expensive problem because they probably spent a ton of money getting these customers in the first place, and then they didn't activate them, and they just like fall through the cracks. That's like got to be so like. And you said it was the CEO, the
He was
founder.
the founder. Yeah, he was the
Yeah,
CTO.
that would drive me crazy. So it's a really expensive problem. It just so happened that you had a skill set that could help with it. So okay, great. I just wanted to like
And to
point
be
that
fair,
out.
maybe I didn't ask what's your biggest problem. Maybe I said what's your top two or three biggest problems, and then I was like, okay, tell me more about that one, and started digging. But I
Yep.
realized that if I talk to enough people about their biggest problems, what some of those would manifest themselves as data problems that I can probably do something about. So
Right.
I just had to go through that discovery and exploration process.
Do you know roughly how many people you reached out to before you landed that project? So you said you reached out to your network, but are we talking like 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people?
It was probably less than 10.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but first of all, I reached out to people who are closer to me. These are people I'd worked with in the past, so I had a lot of credibility. They're probably close friends,
Hmm.
and they're buyers in the sense that this guy owns the company, he's got the budget, he's got the big
Yep.
problems, and so I was choosing people carefully.
Yep.
And I was looking for people that I would be comfortable reaching out to, that I know that I have the credentials and they would want to work with me if we just found the right thing to work on.
Hmm.
And I just started reaching out.
Perfect. How long ago was that, do you think?
So that was just over 2 years, I would say, maybe 2 years, 3 months.
Hmm. And how long did that project last before it wrapped, if it's wrapped?
So it was a very small project. to be honest. Must have been
Hmm.
about 40 hours. I was billing hourly at the
Hmm.
time. I
Hmm.
didn't know better. And I honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I just needed something to do. And that
Right.
was the first thing. And so it wasn't a big project. And right after that project, we took a time off as a family. We went on a vacation to Canada, I think for 3 weeks, and I came back. That's after I left Meta. That's after I finished with that project, and I came back to an empty calendar for the first time in 20 years, sitting in front of my
Yeah.
computer. And
Yeah.
actually, if you ask what were the hardest moments in this journey, that must have been one of
Yeah.
them, where I was literally sitting in front of my computer and I was asking myself, okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Because up until now I had this project to work on. I was still tying loose ends with Meta, but that was the first time I realized, okay, I'm on my own. Nobody needs my time. Nobody's waiting for me for anything. Nobody even
Yep.
knows that I'm here and what I do, and I need to figure it out.
Yeah, that's one of the things when I went solo, I didn't appreciate the magic that the sort of the E-Myth model. There's sort of like technician, entrepreneur, and manager. These three business roles described by Michael Gerber in that book. And I was a total technician, and I did not realize how magical it is to just sit down at your desk on Monday and there's a bunch of stuff for you to do that's going to create value for your employer, and because it's going to create value for the clients. And that is a cold bucket of water when all of a sudden you sit down. Exactly, I laughed when you said it because I remember it. It's like empty calendar. Like, it is up to you. It's no longer your boss's job to fill your calendar. It's no longer your employee's job to put things in your calendar. Now it's your job to get things in your calendar. And like you said, no one even knows you're there except for the, maybe fewer than 10 people you reached out to. So, okay. So then what happened next? And so you finished the project, went on vacation, come back. Okay. So then now you're staring at the blank calendar. What was your thought process like that? What was your emotional state?
First of all, I did freak out for about half a day, and
Mm-hmm.
I realized how much structure a company creates for you. And for the first time in more than 20 years, I didn't have structure, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized I needed to do that for myself, and I didn't even know what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, first of all, I need to start reaching out to people. It doesn't matter whom, but I know I need to have meetings at that point. I need to have as many meetings as I can
Mm-hmm.
to start selling myself and pitching myself, and just be out there and get in touch with people. Like, that's the most important thing. So
Mm-hmm.
focus on that and continue tapping into my network. That was number one. The
So
second thing,
tactically, but yeah, before you move on, if you don't mind,
yeah.
what did that actually look like? Because people are like, was that email? Is it DMs? Is it phone calls? Is it cold calls? Are you seeing them in person and going out to scheduling dinners or coffees and stuff? Like, what was it like?
All of the above. So, with people, I had their direct phone number, WhatsApp number. I would just text them and I would say, "Hey, how have you been?" With some people, it's been on LinkedIn. With others, it's been through an introduction or a common friend. And I said, "Oh, I need to speak with that person. I haven't
Right.
actually spoken to them in 15 years, so maybe ask another friend to kind of reconnect us." So it's been all of the above, and I just realized I have to talk to as many people as I can and just tell
Yep.
them I'm a solopreneur now. I do something different, and just understand, learn about their situations, learn about their work, see if there's any way I can help, but also just be out there and talk to as many people as I can, because I knew that if I keep sitting here on my, at my desk, not talking to anyone, just being locked down in my room, no work is going to come my way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's the ideal instinct. It's the exact instinct that I wish everyone had. But okay. So then you're going to move on to the second thing. So,
yeah, so the second thing I said, I need to learn a lot. There's so many things I don't know. Like, I don't know how to do pricing. I don't know how to write proposals. I don't know how to create invoices. I don't know. I don't understand how to write contracts. I don't know anything. So I just need to learn a lot.
mhm.
And that's entirely in my control, right? I can sit down, I
Yeah.
can read books, I can listen to podcasts, I can listen to videos. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I've read some of your books, and Hourly Billing is Nuts, for example, was one of the first things that I've read that actually changed my mind. And I've used your proposal template, which I still use to this day. And
Cool.
yeah, so these things have been immensely helpful, and just trying to find people I can follow to learn from, and reading Alan Weiss's book and Ron Baker and Alex Ramosi and
Yeah.
Blair Enns, and just listening to all of these people and understanding and trying to get a sense of how they talk about the work, how they talk about the sales process. I mean, I never had to sell myself. I didn't even know how to do that.
Mm.
Uh, so all of these things were completely new to me. It was a very steep learning curve, but I said I
Hmm.
need to just sit and learn as much as I can.
Yeah, you're triggering a whole bunch of memories of 2006 when I was doing the same thing, and it's almost identical to the list that you made earlier about talking to an accountant, to talk to a lawyer to set up the company, and all that stuff, errors and emissions insurance, and all of the basic stuff that you're like, okay, it's kind of in your control. You just have to find out what you need to do and do it. Um, but then there's the marketing and sales aspect, which you just don't learn it as an employee. But I'm going to make a list of books for people who are in this exact situation. Like they have never worked for themselves before. They don't even know the most basic things about setting up a business. There's a bunch of good ones, like How to Get Started in Consulting by Alan Weiss. It's very straightforward. It's just a bunch of lists mostly, but very, very helpful. And yeah, so I'll make a list of things that people should check out, and I'll put it in the show notes. But anyway, okay, so you're doing all that. What happens next?
And then there's two more things. There's two more things I would mention. The next one is having a buddy, and it just happens that a friend of mine, which you all also know, Meir, he also started in consulting pretty much around the same time. I think maybe 2 weeks earlier or something. So, and we had worked together at PayPal probably 15 years before. So we reconnected, and we were just chatting every week, and sharing progress and bouncing off ideas and brainstorming together and reviewing each other's proposals and products and work, and just strategizing together. And I think that having somebody to share the journey with has been one of the most helpful things for me, because it's a very lonely journey to some extent, and there are lots of situations that you just need somebody to listen to and sense check and say, yeah, it sounds right to me, or no, I wouldn't do it that way. I think you should be doing something different. And still to this date, we always use each other a lot to, in that way. And I think that having a buddy has been a game changer for me in that.
Oh yeah, that's you're so lucky that you guys are sort of at the same stage at the same time, and in different businesses, but both uh, sort of advisory, very highly technical, highly skilled, expert-based businesses, solo businesses, and that's really lucky. But if people couldn't do that, if they didn't have someone that they knew that was at the same time, I could imagine some other things to suggest. Like, for example, did you reach out to anybody in your network who you already knew that had gone solo earlier than you? So in other words, someone who's farther ahead than you, and just like a contact, like a mentor kind of thing for entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I have very good friends who've been freelancing for a long time before I started, and they're in a completely different phase. I did use them a lot as mentors, and I did consult with them, but it still felt different to having somebody who's sharing the journey with you.
Yeah, right. That's two different things.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of when I was doing a lot of consulting, the sort of bigger ticket consulting. It was not uncommon for someone who I worked with, like a very close contact at the company, to take me aside at some point and be like, so if I was ever going to start doing what you do, how would I get started? Or, because they start to be like, wow, you have a pretty sweet life. And I'm like, they're grinding 40 hours a week at least. They don't have time to go learn how to fly or whatever. So I could imagine that if you're working in a big company like Meta or PayPal or wherever the listener might be working, they might work with consultants, or they might have worked with consultants who were perhaps solo. Even if they weren't solo, it would probably be worth reaching out to those folks and saying, hey, I'm going solo. I'm like a newbie, a wannabe consultant. Could I pick your brain, buy a coffee, whatever, like refresh the relationship. Because like you said, they'll be in a totally different place, but they'll have made 100 mistakes that they can just say, oh, don't do that. Right.
100%.
Yeah, but it's two different things. You have that sort of someone who's more experienced, and then someone who's kind of, from an emotional basis, kind of in the same place. And you can both be like, I'm kind of freaking out here. Like, how are you doing? cool. I love that one. I wouldn't have thought of that actually. That's a good one.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say was LinkedIn. I didn't start posting on LinkedIn. I've been posting on LinkedIn every day probably for the past 2 years.
Hmm.
I didn't do it to build an audience or to become famous or anything like that. My rationale in the beginning was that I've been coaching and mentoring people throughout my entire career. I've always had teams. I've always been a manager, so I've always grown and mentored people all the way from intern level to senior executives, and that was actually one of the parts of my job that I loved the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that being a solopreneur means giving up on that to some extent, because I'm not going to have a team anymore. By definition, I'm on my own. So I just thought, okay, I want to try and continue sharing insights and growth tips and advice with people, at the largest scale I can. And I just thought, okay, maybe I did learn a few things over the past 20 years about career growth. I'll just start posting about it on LinkedIn and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually been very helpful. It was very well received. I started building my audience. I started building my network, and then I started speaking in conferences and those kind of things. But it's one of the ways of being out there. And what I realized today, in hindsight, is that there's probably 5 ways of getting leads, right, or getting job, which is marketing, sales, partnerships, organic, and network.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think strategically about my go-to-market approach and posture and how I'm going to do it, and kind of say no sales, no partnerships, just focus on network and marketing. But it kind of organically happened. But when I started posting on LinkedIn, all of a sudden, people started coming to me,
Mm-hmm.
and they started reaching out saying, hey, can we need some help with this project, we need some help with that project, I'm looking for a career growth mentor, I feel like I've hit a ceiling, can we talk? And I just realized that if you create a lot of good in the world, and you just post and you create a lot of value for people, some of that will come back to you. So that was never the intention, but actually most of my work just comes from the fact that I post daily on LinkedIn.
Mm. That's good to hear. And obviously it totally aligns with my worldview too. And it's more than just karma though. Like you didn't say karma, but a lot of people think it's sort of like a karma thing, and like, have an abundance mentality and share like crazy, and then the good things will happen. Like there's no connection, but it's pretty clear that there's some mechanics that are at work there, that more people are aware of you, more people think more highly of you, more people are aware of your positioning and what your capabilities are. So you're more top of mind when, someone mentions some problem, that their friend mentions some problem they're having, and then boom, Rolodex moment. So yeah, it's certainly nothing mysterious about it. But when you started doing that, it sounds like your motivation was pretty altruistic. But did you find a lot of people are intimidated by the idea of making a public daily commitment to something like that? Did you find it was a pretty easy habit to create, or was it sort of torturous at first, or is it still torturous?
Um, Today I don't think about it. I just do it once or twice, sometimes 3 times a day. I just do it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just part of my routine, and it's become so easy. And I can actually talk about, my learnings there, if that's useful for your audience. What I've learned is I've never been very good with writing. I'll start with that. It's never been something that I've considered to be a strength of mine. And in the beginning, when I wanted to post, I would block an hour in my calendar for make a LinkedIn post, and I would sit down in front of my screen and I would be like, okay, I don't have anything to talk about. And then I realized that actually, to create a piece of content, there's three on LinkedIn specifically, there's 3 things that need to happen: ideation, writing, and editing. And
Mm-hmm.
these are 3 different independent processes that can happen independently. And the most important one is ideation, coming up with ideas. And you cannot force that process. It's a very intuitive process. I was sitting there staring at my screen, trying to think, okay, what am I going to talk about? No idea would come up. But then I would drive to pick my daughter up from somewhere, And then as I'm driving, my brain is wandering and I have 50 different ideas.
Yeah.
Or when I take a shower, my brain is running and I'm getting all these ideas. And then I have a one-to-one meeting with somebody. They say something and it triggers something in my brain, and I know, oh, I should post about that. And these are idea moments that just happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
realized that I need a system to capture those ideas.
Yeah.
They're just out there and I need to capture them.
Yeah,
So,
I describe them as fireflies. If you don't catch it right that second, it's going to disappear, and you're going to
gone.
remember that you forgot one.
Yeah.
And that feeling drives me crazy. It's like, oh, I had a great idea for a comic the other day, and where was I? And I try and put myself back, like, oh yeah, I thought of it on the way to karate, and I was in East Providence, and like, oh, going past the dollar store, and that's what it was. It was the dollar store sign. And yeah, so I totally agree. That firefly phase, for anybody who wants to be putting out more content and has had that torturous um, writer's block, staring at a blinking cursor, it's because you don't have an ideas file. You haven't been capturing fireflies. But once you commit to doing that, and you realize how fleeting they just zoom right by. And if you don't capture it right away somehow, and you just then you go back to listen to the radio or whatever you're doing in the car, it's gone. But they add up very quickly if once you turn on that detector, or that bug light, I guess, to capture them. I mean, I have over 1,000 ideas in my idea file. I'll never get through them all ever. It's great once you have that, and it makes it so easy when you do go to sit down, because you can just scroll through and you get re-inspired by one of them.
Yeah, and these ideas in my ideas file. I also have an ideas file. It's the mechanics of that is literally an Apple Note,
Mm-hmm.
and I've chosen the Apple Notes apps because it's always open on my laptop. It's always open on my phone. So everywhere I am, it's probably going to be 1 or 2 clicks away. So
Mm-hmm.
minimum friction to capture an idea is what I was looking for.
Yep.
I probably have close to 2,000 ideas, and funny enough, like this is my backup list. So when I sit down to write a post, usually I just post about whatever is top of mind right now, and I don't even look at that file. But if I don't have inspiration, I'm tired, it's the end of the day, I just need something to write about, I would open this file, scroll until something hits, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to talk about that. And then comes writing, so which is step
Yep.
number 2.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works for me too.
Yeah, perfect. And writing, I've made the biggest mistake, which is not decoupling writing from editing. So I would sit down and write, and it didn't flow. Like I would write a few words and I would delete them and I would write them again and I would write something different. And it was taking me hours. And I realized that I saw somebody's post, some Australian creator who said, write fast, edit slow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really clicked to me. Like I realized I just need to get it out there, whatever it is. I just need to write it down, and then I can start editing and I can start iterating on that as many times as I want. And I can think about the structure and the different paragraphs, and okay, I'm repeating this word too many times, I need to find a different one. All these kind of things can happen later once you have a clean draft to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing I need to do. And so now it takes me probably like 2-3 minutes to knock out a post, and then I will spend another 10 minutes editing it, and then shoot it out, and then whatever happens. And
Yep.
the last thing is the moment. I think that a lot of people are petrified of the moment they press post because they don't know what will happen. And my suggestion there, because I used to freak out. I would sit there and see if people are reacting and if they're responding, and I would get upset that they don't. And I realized that you just have to forget about it. Like the post is out there, whatever happens. Maybe people will like it, maybe they won't, maybe it will backlash and you will regret it, but it doesn't matter, right? So hit post button and go make yourself coffee or do something meaningful with your life. Maybe do it right before a meeting, so you hit the post button and then you get on the meeting.
Yeah,
But
that's a good one.
find a way to forget about it the moment you do it, and then come back to it after an hour and see what happened.
Yeah, I find most, especially daily writers, get through this phase relatively quickly because it's just like exhausting, and no matter how much you stare at the screen and refresh the browser, it's not going to affect anything, so it's just pointless. But it's real. And so anything that you can do, if you're listening to this, anything you can do, like scheduling it right before a meeting, or just do anything so that you can just forget about it, because nothing you think about, it's not going to do anything. And it's just, you're just stressing yourself out and being like, it's it just adds nothing. The other thing about this is that, at least in my experience, I might write one that I think is a banger and people are going to love it, and crickets. And then other times I'll be tired and grab something out of my my ideas file, and I'll just dash it off really quickly, and people love it. So it's a little bit of a different thing. It's not exactly like hoping for engagement live on the spot, but it's like, you don't know which ones are good. You don't know which ones aren't good until they interact with people, which is why journaling doesn't count, in my opinion. That might be useful for something else, but publishing every day, you find out which of your ideas resonate and which ones don't. So anyway, so yes, all good advice, great advice, and just total parallel to my experience as well.
And I will just say, people say there's no, there's no shortcuts, and I agree. Like, it takes about a year from the moment you do it, and still you start feeling that, okay, you've got audience, and you see the same people responding again and again and engaging, and you make some connections with them, and I mean, and leads start coming through. I mean, don't do 3, 4, 5 posts and expect that, people will start jumping at you, asking you to do work. You just have to keep doing it and keep at it for at least a year, and then decide if you like it and you want to keep going.
Yeah, it's gardening. You don't get tomatoes in 2 days.
No.
Yeah, totally agree. And the other thing, and the other thing I like to point out here is that, and I've interviewed maybe a dozen or more people about their daily writing practice on Doing Daily, which is another podcast. And there's a couple of things that are common with everybody, and there's some things everybody does differently. Like, everybody does the writing differently. They store the ideas a different way. Like, all of that process stuff is different. But a lot of the observations are the same. And one of them is you already mentioned, is that you start having way more ideas than you ever need once you start doing it daily. The other one is that the process of publishing daily and getting feedback really helps you clarify your idea, like what you're actually trying to say. So it basically creates a whole bunch of intellectual property that is stuck in your head in an almost intuitive way for you. So like, you just know what to do in a given type of situation that you've been in 1,000 times before, but then trying to turn that into kind of like a short story with a moral, or some kind of articulated, useful information for someone who doesn't have that same expertise. It takes practice, and going through this process will get you much clearer on how to articulate your expertise, which pays off almost immediately in sales meetings and other sorts of interactions with clients. So it has a it has a payoff much quicker than a year, but that payoff is usually not the thing that people think it's going to be.
100% agree. And especially on LinkedIn, where people have the attention span of a 5 years old, and usually you cannot write more than 2 or 3 paragraphs, because
Yeah.
if you write long form, then you can sometimes get away with just rambling and not being super clear. But how do you condense this very big idea into just a few sentences or just a couple of paragraphs? I think is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even harder, and it forces you to be very sharp. And I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Mark Twain that wrote, he sent a letter to someone and he said, "I'm sorry, this letter is so long. I didn't have to, if I had more time, it would have been shorter." It's true. It's the editing phase. All excellent observations that resonate totally with me. So, okay. So looking at the clock, let's get to, I think we talked about before the show, not on the air, about things you would have done differently now 2 years on. So what are some mistakes you made, or things you could have done a little bit better? Maybe help people who are getting ready to go through the same transition.
Yeah, 100%. So first of all, I will say that there are few things that, or maybe learnings of or observations or fears, as you call them,
Mm-hmm.
that are worth mentioning. The first one is not getting a steady paycheck every, couple of weeks or every month. I think that requires a big adjustment, because my salary is not predictable anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes, one day I make 6 figures, and then, for a couple of months, I don't know what's going on anymore. And I don't even know what my next project is going to be.
Yeah,
And
it's very spiky.
it's extremely spiky, especially in the beginning. It's extremely unpredictable. And it's very easy to lose your confidence, and just thinking, okay, am I ever going to do it? Now I have money, but will I have money in the future? And, that's been on my mind a lot in the beginning. How do I let go of that feeling, and how do I get to a state that I just, I'm at peace with not knowing how much I make? And
Uh-huh.
I spoke with a friend of mine. He's an investor, and he invests in, about 4 or 5 startups a year.
Hmm.
And probably out of 5 startups, one of them will make it big, another one will probably make it, okay-ish, and the other ones, basically lost money, and it takes about 4 to 6 years until they mature, right? So this guy, when I met him, I realized that he's probably got a big payday once a year, and that's pretty much it. And that payday gets, a few millions, and he can, get off with his way, and then he will keep investing that money, and the cycle goes. But I realized, okay, this person, like, I'm freaking out about not having, a payday every month, and then this guy has
Yeah.
one a year in the best case scenario. He doesn't even know when. He doesn't know what's that going to be. So
Yeah.
maybe there is a way to live your life without knowing, and you just have to accept it.
Yep.
At the same time, you can create some predictability. So I've realized that if, at least with some of my clients, I have some sort of a retainer or a longer term engagement, well, my salary will become a little bit more predictable, which helps a lot in the beginning. And, not go 100% on just one client. I mean, it depends on the type of work you do and the type of engagement, but
Hmm.
maybe try to create a portfolio. So if one project goes off, then at least you have the other ones to balance that out.
Yep.
And these are the kind of learnings that I had. Um, in terms of things that I would have done differently, knowing everything that I know today, I would just say that um, working in Meta for 6.5 years, my network was mostly dormant, in the sense that most of the people that I had a direct connection with were Meta employees or people that were colleagues of mine, and there are a lot of really great people, that I leaned on after that. There are founders of companies, executives in companies, even just friends who are, analytics people in different companies, and connected me with relevant people in their network.
Hmm.
I hadn't spoken to them for years, and one of the things I realized that if I had known, a year before that at this date I'm going to leave Meta, I would probably spend a lot more time just reactivating my network, right? Just
Mm.
getting in touch with people, even, spend 2 or 3 hours a week just reconnecting, having virtual coffees, just meeting people for dinners, and getting to know people. So you have the infrastructure. So when you're out and you're on your own, at
Yep.
least you have the people to reach out to.
Yes, that's a great one. And here's a behavior that I went off social media with the exception of LinkedIn, but I don't really spend a lot of time on LinkedIn reading it. It's more like I'm posting to it or interacting with people on my posts, but um, it is definitely a 100% work thing. I'm not scrolling Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or any of those. But what I do find myself doing, and this is, I think the right kind of people actually really enjoy this, in a way that where they don't have to make themselves do it. It's just fun. Is instead of opening, like if you go to open Facebook or Instagram, instead open your SMS application and just start texting people that you haven't talked to in a while. Like that, like it's still kind of like social media. You're still getting like a dopamine hit or whatever, but like just like scroll way down and be like, oh, I haven't talked to my sister-in-law, or it doesn't matter. It's just like go down and be like, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in a while. And it has the same kind of, for me at least, it has the same kind of like after dinner, like it's the time when I maybe would have watched TV in the past, where I'm kind of like winding down and trying to, almost in that sort of like entertainment slash socializing mode. And instead of, years ago, I would have been on Twitter. And instead of that, or Facebook, instead of that, it's just like start texting people. And obviously, if you don't have their phone number, then you have to use your email or something. But, or maybe you only have, like, I have a couple of friends whose contact information, the only way to get in touch with them is to DM them on some, like I log into Facebook once a year for my birthday and for my a friend of mine's birthday, because that's the only place he is. And anyway, so I think that activity is just open a different app. If you tonight, instead of opening up Instagram, if that's your social media of choice, open up your SMS app and just text people that you haven't texted in a while. I like that way better.
Uh, I actually, there's one more thing that I do every single day on Facebook, which is using
Oh,
the birthdays app.
hmm,
Every single day I check who's got birthday. I'm really bad with remembering the birth dates, and also I have a lot of connections on Facebook. I don't remember all of them, so I would every single day I open the birthdays tab and I just look at who's got birthday today. And even if these are people that I hadn't spoken to in a few years, I would still send them a happy birthday, not on
hmm,
the wall, but as a personal message. Some of
yeah,
them will not respond. That's perfectly fine. But when somebody has a birthday or when somebody starts a new job, so you can do the same thing on LinkedIn when people make job announcements, just sending them a private message saying, "Hey, happy birthday," or "Congratulations on the new job. How have you been?" This
hmm,
is a really great excuse to start a conversation. And
yep.
even if you don't need anything from them right now or anything like that, just an excuse to start a conversation and reconnect with somebody is always a good thing.
Yeah, the best time to do it is when you don't need it. You're not desperate for something.
Yeah.
And I talked to a guy on this subject. I was at a barbecue with a guy who's older, even older than me, if you can imagine. And he sold insurance. And he told me, and I was like, oh, how do you get new clients or whatever? And he said, he has like a big chart on his wall in his office. And it has every single day of the year, like laid. It's this big, huge thing, and it has a square for every single day of the year. And he has for years, maybe 20 years, has been collecting people's birthdays, and he puts the phone number and their name and any notes about them in each of the boxes. And it's like every day he's got like 5 people to call. It's like their birthday that day, and he's not a technical, not an online tech guy. You just call him up, like, hey, it's Bob from blah blah blah. Just thought it was your birthday today. Thought I'd say hi, say how it's going. Da, da. And of course, he's a very extroverted kind of guy, and had the gift of gab and all that. And people liked him because he was hilarious. But it's a similar kind of thing. It's like, it's cool because it's a different trigger. Like the trigger is the trigger is them, something
Yeah.
about them. It's not something about you. Like, I need something, or could you introduce me to this person, or whatever it is. You just like, it's so simple. Yeah, it's really good. Really good. Cool. Anything else that you would do differently?
Um, have buffers. So I did have buffers. I was lucky to have buffers, but I say that because anyone who wants to start at this, you don't want to be at the situation where you leave your job and then 3 months later you realize, oh shit, it's not going the way I was hoping it would. I need to start looking for another job.
Hmm.
You want to give yourself time. Ideally, if you can give yourself a runway of 1 year, that would be the best
Yeah.
because it takes time to go through the basics, to set up, to get momentum, to do all of that. So if you can give yourself this 1 year and you can have you can make yourself financially stable for a year, that's you're giving yourself the best chance.
Yep.
And the last thing, if you can find your first client before leaving your job,
Yeah.
that's always the best. By the way, if you work for a fairly small company, one of the tricks is to try and convert your previous employer to be one of your first clients, and just say,
Right.
"Hey, I'm leaving. I'm starting my consultancy. But if you want me to stay for 1 or 2 days a week, then I would love to continue working together."
Yep. Classic one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great advice all the way around. I can't think of anything to add. Well done, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Where can people go to connect with you and find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, just look me up, Shachar Meir, and also on YouTube. I started recently building my YouTube channel. I've got a few videos about career growth and about some very interesting stuff, especially for analytics people, but not
Hmm.
just. So please check it out. And yeah, always happy to connect with people. So feel free to connect, message me, and let's continue the conversation.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's it for this week. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time on Ditching Hourly. Bye.